Hey
Welcome.
there. Thank you.
Please have a seat.
All right.
Now, perch yourself up here. Welcome to CogX. How are you?
I'm rocking. Yeah.
Good to see you. You've sort of flown in. Well, rockets form a part of your history. Let me just double check these facts. You've worked on a machine to suppress hurricanes.
Yeah, that's true.
3D food printers.
Also true.
A laser that can shoot down mosquitoes.
That's real.
You sure?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You helped build spaceships with Jeff Bezos at
Yeah.
Blue Origin.
So far, so good.
Right, so now I know this is not a highbrow question. How does somebody end up getting to work on so many cool things?
You got to refuse to work on boring shit. That's all I did. Yeah.
So the second part to that question is more serious, which is, why do you stop working on amazingly cool stuff?
Well, I'm good for the beginning. So like if an invention has a life cycle, like raising a kid or something, a lot of people have to like get it through school and get it into college and get it a job. I only do the fun part at the beginning.
Not all parents would agree that's the fun part, I can't tell you, but I see where you go. Okay. And today we're thinking about many things, including what's coming at us. So through those X-ray specs, give us some sense before we sort of bombard you with questions.
Yeah.
On what you see in the future.
Yeah, I think the exciting thing to me is that we're really at this moment where we get to sort of course correct on what technology means. We sort of lost our way 20 years ago because computers were so powerful and exciting and software was so easy and generally applicable that we just got drunk on software. And so we think we have this big tech industry and we have a lot of technology, but the truth is we just have a lot of software. And so what's happened, the side effect of that is we've been ignoring all the other technologies that could really make the world better, that could help us solve problems, that could make the future more awesome. And now we kind of get to go pick those up. And there's a lot of them. A lot of these, scientific progress continued, but these things would just, get through research and then get dropped on the floor because venture capitalists are only funding the sassholes.
Right, so that's my hashtag of the day, right? Okay, I get it. All right.
So I think the job is like, let's go do the cool stuff.
Let's do the cool stuff. Yeah. All right, so in that case, because cool might not necessarily be sexy, we could discuss this. What's underhyped?
Oh, what's underhyped? What's underhyped? What's underhyped is what I call deep tech, and that really to me is, think about that. What technology means is like you have a new invention, you have a new understanding that came out of science, you have a new capability, and these are the new superpowers that we get. And so when you look at what's happening, a lot of businesses are busy trying to make themselves a few % better each year. But when you get a technology driver, it's not percentages, it's like 10x, 100x, 1000x. And we have those. There's so many. Yeah.
Right, so sort of those leaps.
Bring those to life, yeah.
And so just on that deep tech question, I'm going to quiz you for one more minute. Help us think about deep tech.
Yeah.
It's sort of more of the same, isn't it? It's sort of,
It's not more of the same. A lot of the things that humans do, we just had to get version 1 working. Like, look at the railroads. They're entirely made of steel. Like, not just the tracks, the trains, the wheels, the doorknobs, everything in the railroad system was just made of steel. We just threw steel at that problem and made version 1. And that was before we could really understand the way we do now, how to make them efficient, make them fast, make them, use less energy, all those things. So now we can go back with everything and kind of redesign it with efficiency as a design requirement, with, like carbon-free as a design requirement, whatever it is that we get to do that now. We get to kind of reinvent everything with the knowledge we have, and that's what's exciting. That's what deep tech means to me.
Right, that sets the scene brilliantly.
Yeah.
So in terms of our guests firing some questions our way, anywhere you don't want to go?
There is one place I don't want to go, but
Okay.
you'll have to find it the hard way.
All right. Right, well, who's going to get the ball rolling? Who will offer me a question? I see
Yeah.
some hands starting to spark. Would you mind, team? Thank you. We're going to go in a little triangle, and then I'm going to come over to this zone here. Just in this row here, right in the middle, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. Team, much appreciated.
Hi there.
Hey.
Thanks for the talk. Really thought-provoking presentation earlier. Can you speak to the political motivations as to what could be hindering all of this new tech, deep tech? And yeah, I see you chuckling. Because we know that R&D is being driven by the military-industrial complex, and there's a lot being done there at the moment with massive financial resources.
Yeah.
But we don't get to actually appreciate, because we don't know what's being developed at this time, unless you have ins in Raytheon or the likes. And so I'd love your take on this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. First of all, the political side of this stuff is really out of my jurisdiction. That's really about how does civilization, how do societies decide which things to do. And I got to say, in a lot of cases, I'm not impressed with the choices that we're making because they could be better. And so, the way I see it, look, there's a bunch of like developmental stages that a new technology has to go through. I sort of try to work on just adding more tools to the toolbox. And sometimes we can get them to life quickly. Sometimes it takes generations, and a lot of times we derail. The story that we get in our heads causes us to derail. And I think like the best example of that is, if we had built nuclear reactors since the 80s, you never would have heard of global warming. But we conflated reactors with bombs. We got mushroom clouds in our heads. We told ourselves the wrong story. We made the wrong choice. We're living with the consequences of that now, and they're extreme. And it's time to course correct on that. But that's what the political part of this is about, is like, how do you change the story in people's minds? How do you make a better decision? How do you steer towards it? And that's just an example of having over-regulated something before we understood it. So you could see that happening again with something like AI. Like now, we have this amazing new toolkit, and we risk regulating it too early before we understand it.
So on that, and there was a sort of theory implicit in the question, where in the world does the outrageously ambitious entrepreneur head to work either with states' blessing or backing to solve the biggest problems in the world?
Well, I think the role for government, there's a really important role that governments have to do, which is fund research. We don't have another model for how to do that yet. So historically, the only successful funding model at scale is governments have to back research. And the better job they do of that, the more output we get. I'm an inventor. I take the output of research. Their job is discover how the world works. That's what scientists are doing in research labs. I take that output and say, okay, we got a new chip, we got a new sensor, we got a new algorithm, we got whatever it is, and ask myself, does this change anything humans have ever done? Like, can we do it faster, cheaper, better, in a more humane fashion? That's invention.
That's clear.
And then that's the part that happens right before the startup, right? So we all hear all the stories of the startups, but we don't hear the stories about the inventions and where they came from to get there. So
no. Now, I'm not going to get lured in because we'll be here for 2 hours. I promised here and then here, and we're going to go off in this direction. Please, just at the back of your hand, kindly in the air. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Levan. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist and data scientist. I work at the Alan Turing Institute. My question really builds on the discussion. Do you think there's a difference between countries, let's say the US and UK or Europe, in enthusiasm towards tech and optimism towards tech? And if so, what do you think can be done to combat this here?
And are you wondering there, forgive me, Pablos will answer in his own way, are you wondering about the attitude of the peoples of that country, of the leaders?
Yes, of the younger generation, scientists, engineers, etc.
I mean, look, there's a lot of great scientific research in Europe, in other places in the world. I think there's a problem with, I think there's a negative sentiment about tech because there've been, the word basically started to just mean Facebook, you know, and, you know, Airbnb and Uber. To me, that's not tech, but that is what people think of. The apps on their phone is tech. So I get it, you know, we're frustrated with some of those things. We overdid it with some of them. Some of them were bad actors and have been kind of uncool. Whatever, that's all sucky, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, let's go get some new superpowers that can solve climate change, that can solve, you know, infectious disease, that can solve the problems that we have in the world. And to me, I think everyone's excited about those things if they know and understand what's possible.
Okay, so glass half full. Let's come down the front here. Thank you. And I'm looking to this side. Yes, we'll come over there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrew Gerrard from C2 Capital. I want to pick up on your analogy of the railroads, and also just to slightly echo Oli's point about where do entrepreneurs go to get the support that they need. Much of what you've just described with your railroad analogy is evolution, not revolution.
Right.
Even though people threw a lot of steel at it, as you quite rightly say. But that is Clayton Christensen's innovator's dilemma. I'm much more interested in Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. And how do we create the environments and the economies that are ripe for the innovations that we are looking for, as you say, to go out and solve cancer, solve climate science, etc. Because so much of what we innovate today is commercially driven, when the innovations we really need have no commercial application at all today whatsoever, because they just don't exist. How do we create the environments that are going to generate those innovations of the future?
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, there's nothing works perfectly, and but we do have some machinery that has worked pretty well. And one example is, back in the 80s, every big corporation had an R&D department, and they would hire scientists with PhDs to invent the next generation of technology for the company. And they kept getting their butts kicked by two guys in a garage with no money, no resources, no time. That was the origin of Silicon Valley. So we learned from that. Big American companies shut down R&D, and they replaced it with M&A. And what that means is Silicon Valley became this kind of petri dish where we could run a lot of experiments. Every startup is $1 million experiment, and we run thousands of them. And the reason is that's an efficient way to try a lot of things and discover what's going to work the best, because nobody is smart enough to guess. And that's what I was trying to say on stage. Nobody is smart enough to guess what's going to work the best in the future. You have to have a context where you can run a lot of experiments, get a lot of shots on goal. And so I think of Silicon Valley as, so far, despite all its flaws and all the complaints, so far it is the most successful model for making those new technologies come to life, right? And if you use software as an example, how many big tech companies can you name from Europe or China? 2, 3, 4. Try California. I'm not saying it's right, but we're doing something that's working. And what I think that the rest of the world needs to do is learn from that and do better. Kick our ass. Show us how you can do better. But don't start with some, little league, pretend Silicon Valley, fake startup scene. No, take what we got and make it better. And that's how we're going to scale this up. That's how we're going to get it out of Silicon Valley and spread around the world so that we can build these companies everywhere.
And very briefly, Pablos, forgive me, but when you look at your peers today in Silicon Valley, where are they going wrong?
No, Silicon Valley really lost its way. First of all, it overfixated on software, and it's really been arbitrarily reductionist. If you go drive down 101 from San Francisco, every single billboard on that highway now is advertising software to other software companies. It's all just API for this or that. That's not technology. That's not where we need to go. So look, I think it's in some ways it's great that the rug's been yanked out from under the who I call the sassholes, because we do need to go do these other things. And
they're helpful. Yeah. I got it. Please. Actually, just behind you there. There we go. The hand raised. There we go. Thank you very much. And I'll probably take some from the middle as well. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for your time. I think my question links on quite well to your point about taking what has been done in Silicon Valley and then like doing better across the world. Yeah. I think that's a really nice statement, but I think that it's massively reductionist and too simplified. So my question would be, could you please share your views on, I guess, the future of geopolitics regarding AI, considering that the concentration of AI research and compute is really concentrated? And I'd like to consider what role post-colonial theory or decolonial theory could have in addressing the future of AI research development and then also use. How do we make sure that everyone benefits in a way that is truly beneficial?
Cool. And just very briefly, just explain in 30-second post-colonial theory, just so we understand where you're coming from, because we don't want to be outsmarted.
Oh, God forbid. I can't be outsmarted by an inventor. No, post-colonial theory, decolonial theory, it's acknowledging that the UK, Europe, the US has a colonial past heritage, and the history of that still exists today. The symptoms of that still exist today. Major inequality exists in the world because of the actions that we did.
Helpful.
So
thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you, Pablos.
Well, look, I'm going to have to answer this from a different angle, and partly because I'm not an academic versed in those theories. The way it works with technology is that we have to co-opt the rich people and use them to fund developing this stuff and wasting a lot of money on the new technologies in order to develop them far enough to figure out which ones are good. The job is not done once you've made a product for rich people, right? Then the job is to figure out which of those things are good. Maybe it's iPhones, maybe it's electric cars, maybe it's AI, but at some point, then we got to take the stuff that's good to the rest of the world. And you've seen that happen in your lifetime. We quickly get over these things. But the most obvious story that we always use is mobile phones, right? We used rich people to develop it and spent a lot of money to get phones into their cars that cost $5 a minute to talk on. And we bitch and moan about how only the rich people have them. But then that technology gets commoditized, and it is available to almost everyone in the world. We're not done with even mobile phones. We're not done with broadband. But that's the progression, and we can do things to make those progressions happen more quickly, right? But I don't think anybody has a model besides that works better, right? And certainly not faster at getting the technology in the world. So if you look at the lifetime analysis of a new technology, everyone does benefit. But yeah, the rich people benefit early, and they waste a whole bunch of money on it because they can, and that's really what you want to happen. You want rich people wasting their money developing new technologies instead of just buying more yachts. And so,
or rockets.
Well, rockets has actually some application that a yacht doesn't have, right? Rockets might actually get us somewhere that we can't go with a yacht. So I think there's a defensible perspective on that too.
No point well made. So let's take a question in the front here, and then I saw one over there.
Hey Pablos, Aaron from Digital Insights. Nice to see you again.
Yeah.
I was just wondering in the deep tech community whether they have, or the deep tech community in general has kind of pushed its way or realized the anti-ESG movement, or what are their views usually on ESG in general?
I mean, look, that's not my department. ESG is a movement by big corporations to try and show that they're not evil assholes. Great, maybe that's helping. I don't know. What I think is that, you got to look at what I think is you just need a calculator. You just need to do a basic arithmetic. How big is the problem? Is this solution actually going to move the needle on that problem? And a lot of times it seems like people aren't even doing that arithmetic. We're going after these solutions that aren't going to make a difference, or they're like shell games where they're just trying to move. It's accounting, like what is carbon credits? We just move it all around, make it disappear, and that's fine. But like I think if you just look at the problems, you can sort of figure out what's the fundamental basis. Why is this problem being caused, and is there some economic way to prevent that? And so, like I tried to work on carbon capture in 2006. I thought that, carbon caps were coming, and I was wrong, and here we are, whatever, 15 years later or something more, 17 years later, still no meaningful carbon caps. I'm convinced that we shouldn't wait for them. And when you look at it, what are the carbon caps? Well, yeah, it might be a way to like make some incentives and push people around. But why don't we just go solve energy? Like if you solve energy and just make it clean, then you're going to solve the emissions, and you may not even need the carbon caps. Like you don't need to do. If you want to sequester carbon, leave coal in the ground. Right, that's it. It's never going to get better than that. That's like the highest density source of carbon versus atmospheric carbon, which is the most entropic source. It's like you're going after the hardest possible place to get carbon. So I think that's those kinds of things. I think just do some arithmetic.
Well, I'm tempted to sort of pull on these threads, but I want to get another question in that, just on that second row on this side, and then
should have planned more time. I'm too long-winded.
No, well, that's hopefully a good conclusion. This has been great. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear? Yeah. So my name is Nicholas Strong. I'm here on behalf of the World Humanitarian Forum, AI for Good Program Board. We're really interested in promoting exciting technology to deal with really, really difficult situations for vulnerable people, particularly with a number of disasters at the moment. I've heard all about the bling, the AI bling, and how that could filter down. I was wondering if you could tell me what AI bling you think would help for these people who are in very vulnerable situations now. What would you suggest? I heard your wonderful talk about vaping mosquitoes, so you can't mention that one.
Well, that's not an AI thing. I don't know what AI bling means. Do you mean Bing? I don't know, what's an AI bling? Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, look, all these things, by definition, to make money off of a product, you need a big market. And it turns out rich people aren't a big market, right? And so when you look at what happens over time, we want to bring, like, everybody in the world can use Facebook for free, Instagram for free, Twitter for free. Why is that? Because the people who have the most money are subsidizing it by paying for it through advertising. That is true.
It is, but not for the people that need help.
Yeah. Also, Pablos, forgive me.
Well, I don't. We can talk after this because I would like to get to the bottom of it. But my point is, we will make these things accessible to people over time.
Except
that's true.
But Pablos, your theory, that theory doesn't work, does it? Because the trickle-down theory that you're putting forward, that we solve for the rich, which one day trickles down, slightly overlooks, if I may say, the point being made by the questioner, which is that the problems worth solving at the grassroots have never been faced by the rich. So the theory falls apart.
Well, it's, look, that's but presuming that it's the job of the rich to solve it for everyone else.
Yeah, but it was the way you helped us believe that these problems would be solved, and I'm saying it's a flawed theory.
No, I think maybe I wasn't articulate. What I'm trying to say is those technologies become available. The people with the problems still have to choose to adopt them.
Because it is demoralizing for many of us who visit the streets of San Francisco.
We used to say Calcutta, but now we say San Francisco.
And see that whilst we were developing ways to deliver pizza faster and hotter, or dropped into your back garden, attention was not being focused on the biggest problem. So how do we get more brains focused on problems worth solving?
Yeah, well, look, I think everybody has a role in this, right? Some of us can add tools to the arsenal. Some of us can pick up those tools and solve problems with them. And I think that, right now, a lot of the people that, if I were going to call out a problem, I would say that we are too busy waiting for like Netflix season 3 and not busy working on figuring out like how do we take care of the people around us, right? So, I mean, I'm just one guy. I can't do everything, but I try. And I think that, you know, everybody has a role in that. And there are a lot of people
a cursory
trying.
glance down your CV shows someone who is working on problems worth solving. So let that point not be misunderstood. We've been gifted 4 minutes, and I'm going to run with that. Is that all right? See, you can tell the producers are enjoying your what you say. Let's go back to this back row. Thank you so much. And then to you, sir, have been very patient. Thank you. And we'll be pithy on both sides, if I may. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a data scientist, and maybe one day I will have a startup or something. And my brain works. I would love to create a model of my brain, given your experience, where you mentioned in Silicon Valley there is multiple experiments happens, and we look for which one would succeed. And from that perspective, I always think about a relationship between the investor and the technology people who always work in things. And from that perspective, technology requires maybe a lot of money. I'm thinking of something like maybe OpenAI, where they need a lot of money to develop such a thing. Yeah. And investors looking for profit. Yeah. But at the same time, during that phase, that could last for a year, 2, 3, 5. I feel somehow we don't have the mindset here in the UK where the investors have that long-term energy to invest and to continue with the startups. Do you agree with me on that, or there's something I need to consider? I would love to listen.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have kind of a functional system for research. Needs more capital. We have a fairly functional system for software startups. We have a growing functional system for deep tech, largely by co-opting the machinery of venture capital. That has very tight constraints. And it is, in some sense, the highest risk capital there is, right? So I can invest in something before there's a product, before there's a PowerPoint deck, before, I can do that. But very few people could do that. Anybody, and I'm the craziest of all, right? Every other venture capitalist has an MBA, and they're going to want to see a spreadsheet before they invest. And they're going to want to see customers, and they're going to see those things. So you have to be able to tie those dots together. It's like I put money in here, and we get more money out there, right? For any kind of business, that's true. Venture capital, there's 10-year window in there where we put money in here, and we're willing to wait 10 years for the money to come out, but it has to be a lot because I got to pay for all the other dumb shit that didn't work, right? So you just really want to understand the business model of investors. And when you do that, what you'll find is that, it'd be really great if we had an investor with a 20-year time horizon, but that basically doesn't exist. Right?
So an entrepreneur says, carry on.
And so the point is, governments can fill that gap a little bit. So like research is the kind of thing where it is kind of a 20+ year time horizon. You're not going to get the money back out in any way that a commercial investor could put money into it. And those are just the constraints that we have. It's not that we don't like these technologies or want to do them or believe in them. It's just that I'm managing somebody else's money and I got to give it back in 10 years. And so those constraints are what drives the dynamics. Things like OpenAI are aberrations. The miracle of OpenAI wasn't that they figured out how to make an LLM. It was that they figured out how to get enough money to train a massive LLM, right? And they did it based on their reputations and those kinds of things. And occasionally somebody can do that, but it's rare.
To be continued. Thank you. We'll take a final really quick question down the front, and then we really will be out of time. Thanks, Pablos.
I think the fossil fuel industry helped to stall or kill nuclear. Yeah. I think Big Pharma helps to stall or kill cures for stuff. Yeah. What is the equivalent in AI? Is it government? Is it government being worried that the people might actually have some real power?
Oh, man. In 52 seconds. I mean, look, I think with AI, a lot of these, I don't know how much you can blame the oil industry. Probably they funded propaganda campaigns. With nuclear, that's probably, there's some of that going on, bad actors there. I think we need to learn to get our own stories. We actually have the machinery for that now, much better than when I was a kid. Like, people can get, the story from wherever they want. Like they can learn about these things. There's not an arbiter on 3 channels on television like there was when I was a kid. So you could do better. I think that society can do better. We have the kind of the democratized access to information in a way that wasn't true. So I think that's important. As far as AI goes, look, I think the single biggest risk is that it is preposterous to regulate things before you understand them. I think it is wrong. I think it is fucking evil. And that is what the risk with AI is right now. We can do amazing things with these technologies. We can really change education. We can change how we take care of people. We can change healthcare. We can improve so many things. And to regulate it now before we understand would be wrong.
Isn't that the number one reason to regulate something, because you don't understand it?
No. When you understand the risk, then you regulate it. When you understand the problem, you regulate it. Right now, we're imagining risks, we're imagining problems, and it's easy to imagine all kinds of bullshit that may or may not be real. So that's my view on that. And everybody can disagree, but that's...
Well, this is why we need season 2 of this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll stick around if you guys want to talk. I know we're going to get kicked off stage. But thank you thanks for putting up with me.
Okay, you do not disappoint. Pablos Holman, thank you so much. That was brilliant.
Thank you.
I love it.